Hey guys, welcome to Modeling Insanity TV. I'm Rob Riv and we're ready to start part 2 of the H39 build from Tamiya. I appreciate everybody who watched part 1, so let's get to it. Alright, for those who didn't see part 1, this is our 45-second recap. So in part 1, we did a lot of stippling with Mr. Surfacer 500 to create that cast texture. And more stippling. And more stippling. And more stippling. And we then took a break from stippling to putting on more stretch sprue. And more stretch sprue. We then drilled out holes for grab handles. And more drilling. And more drilling. We then filled in holes with some Tamiya basic putty. And then sanded. And then sanded some more. And then sanded some more. I was so sick of sanding. But we had to sand. But it worked out in the end because the results were great. And if you look at these pictures, you can see all the hard work and all the sanding and all the stippling and all the stretch sprue worked out in the end. Which gets us to where we are here for part 2, so let's get started. Alright, so for my grab handles, I usually use some basic beading wire from the Michaels or Hobby Lobby. So this is 26 gauge beading wire. So with the flat nose ply, what I'll do is I'll usually put a right angle into the beading wire. And then I use a jig that I made out of Evergreen strip, which is the exact width of the grab handle, and I use this to bend the beading wire. Once the basic shape is done, I used a flat nose plier to straighten out each side and make perfect right angles. Once the grab handle is made, I cut it to size using a wire cutter or old side sprue cutter. And then test fit the grab handle in the holes. Sometimes a little push is needed to get them through. With the grab handle through the holes and in place, we're going to use a little guide to give the depth of the grab handle. Using a guide allows you to keep the depth the same if you're using multiple grab handles on the model. This guide was made out of a .20 styrene strip from Evergreen. Now that we have the depth of the grab handle set, I glued in place from the back side of the hatch using VMS Flexy 5K CA. I prefer VMS CA glue, but you can use any manufacturer glue for this. Now we're going to put the other grab handle in place by using the plastic guide to set the depth. With the grab handle in place, we're going to set it with some VMS Flexy CA. After cutting down the grab handle from the backside, we test fit the hatch to make sure there's no fit issues. Then using a brush, I apply some Mr. Surfacer 500 on the base of the grab handles to fill in any small gaps around the wire. I lightly apply the Mr. Surfacer and blend it into the surrounding armored texture. With the hatches all done, we can start putting the details on the upper hull. I'd be lying to you if I knew what these parts were, but all I know is the instructions say they go here, so that's where I'm putting them. Now I'm putting on the shackle bases to the sides of the hull. Like the front shackle bases, these are also keyed, so you can't mess this up. The same goes for the portholes. They are also keyed, so you can only put them in one direction. Just use a little bit of glue and you'll be just fine. I decided to put just a little more extra thin to the backside of these ports because I felt like they could fall out easily. A little extra glue will keep them in place. We are now going to assemble the idler wheels. Tamiya gives you the option of making two versions of this model, the German captured version and the French version which we're building now. And the idler wheels differ on each version. Instead of molding two completely different idler wheels, Tamiya decided to only mold the hub for each and share the outer part of the idler. Because we'll be using two halves to make the idler, there will be a prominent seam going down the middle. And just like in part 1 when we filled in seams and gaps with stretch sprue, we're going to do the same thing here on the idler wheel. I again believe that the best way to fill in gaps and seams is using stretch sprue. So just like in part 1, we first applied some Tamiya Extra Thin, followed by the stretch sprue, put it in place with the X-Acto blade, and then added some more extra thin. And then cut it with an X-Acto blade. We then sand the idlers with various grit sanding sponges and get it nice and smooth. Now we'll put together the sprockets. Easy, 2 parts, just a little bit of glue, and they go right together. Next, we're going to assemble the road wheel suspension. The suspension consists of 6 separate parts. Each part contains 7 different parts. If that makes sense, 7 different parts? Yeah, 7 different parts. In the 6 parts, I don't know, I'm confusing myself. Anyway, there's 6 different compartments to the suspension, each containing 7 parts. Yeah, that sounds better, what I just said. 3 parts make up the springs, 2 road wheels, the front and back of each compartment. And then there's 6 of them. I think I'm still confused. Here we just attached the spring, and now we're going to attach the road wheels and then the front of the compartment. I'm applying just a small amount of Tamiya Xtra thin to the connection points. And then line up the front part of the suspension onto the wheels. And with the power of editing, we have all the wheels made. Here's a picture of the finished wheels. And in those pictures, there's a part that we're going to be putting on right now. And I wanted the suspension to be removable so I can paint this in the future. Those who know me know that I don't paint often, so I know who's laughing right now, but I do intend on painting this at some point. So this part was only glued to the suspension arm and not the hull. This way this part can be removable, as you can see here. And I'll do this with all the other remaining suspension arms, just gluing it to the suspension and not the hull. With the suspension assembled, we're now going to move on to the link and lend tracks. These type of tracks have become standard in all recent Tamiya armor kits. I have a love-hate relationship with these type of tracks. Sometimes they work out really good, and sometimes I just can't get them to work right. Thankfully, with these tracks, had no issues, went together perfectly. Here you see me assembling the individual track links that are going to go around the sprocket, and I'll do the same thing for the idler wheels. It's like 8 or 9 tracks for both the sprocket and idler. Just glue them together with some Tamiya Xtra thin. Once assembled, put them on the sprocket and idler and let the glue set. Here I'm putting the tracks that were just assembled onto the sprocket so the glue can fully set and cure. I do the same thing for the idler wheels, also making sure the glue is fully set and cured. Now that the individual links are dry and set on the sprocket and on the idler, we're going to assemble the tracks. So the frontmost return roller has a little bit of a notch on it that fits into one part of the track link on the top run. This makes setting the tracks that much easier, so you can't screw this up. With that top run in place on that little notch, I'm going to apply some glue to the forwardmost track and attach it to those individual link tracks that are on the sprocket. And then glue the tracks that are around the idler wheel to the top track run. With the upper tracks in place, we let it set for a few minutes before moving on to the lower tracks. Following the assembly instructions, we then attach the shorter track runs to the tracks on the idler wheel. Once these shorter tracks are attached, we then glue the lower track run. And then finish it up with the other shorter track run, gluing it at the front and back so they can attach to the longer track run and the tracks that are attached to the sprocket. And with the miracle of editing, I don't have to show you the complete track run on the other side. I can just show you the last part going on, just to show you that these tracks go on the exact same way. Alright, so I can honestly say that these tracks were really easy to put together, but I highly recommend you making these tracks with the upper hull and fenders off the model. This way you can get to any parts if you need to. Also, the tracks aren't sitting the best on the return roller, so those will need to be glued down after the model's been painted. Alright, so now that the wheels and tracks are on, we're going to move on to the fenders. For these left side fenders, I did use Tamiya Extra Thin, but I wasn't happy how it held. I had to hold it for a long time just to create a bond, and I wasn't really happy with that. So when attaching the fender on the other side, instead of using Tamiya Extra Thin, I decided to use VMS Flexy CA. So I added the CA glue first to the little notches that go into the hull, but then I added some CA glue to the tip of my X-Acto blade and applied it to a few spots underneath the hull. And with just a little bit of pressure, it bonds quickly in place. With the fenders now attached to the hull, we will glue on the front and rear mudguards. Each mudguard is specific to each area and also keyed, so again, you can't put them in the wrong place. To do this, we apply just a little bit of extra thin cement and a little bit of pressure to keep them in position. With the lower hull, suspension, and tracks completed, I then test fit the upper hull to ensure it fits correctly. If there are any issues, now's the time to correct them. Just like the fenders, I decided to use VMS Flexy CA to attach the upper hull to the lower hull. I just find it gives a better, quicker bond than using Tamiya Extra Thin or any other type of plastic cement. I first apply a small amount of the Flexy CA at the base of the front of the glacis plate. I then apply a couple of drops at the front of the bottom part of the upper hull. I also apply some on the rear of the upper hull. Unfortunately, I was off screen when I did some of this. With the Flexy CA glue applied, I attach the upper hull to the lower hull using just a little pressure. The bond is quick because of the CA glue, so you do not have to worry about clamping or holding the parts in place. Now we can move on to putting on the tools. The detail on the tools is pretty good. I'm not a big fan of molded on tool brackets and clamps, but to me it did a good job of replicating what the actual tools look like on the real vehicle. I'm attaching these tools with just a little bit of Tamiya Extra Thin so they can be removed later for painting. As you can see here, the holes are already on the fenders for placement of the tools. They go in easy and they actually have very good friction fit. Here I'm attaching the bolt cutters. In my opinion, these are the least detailed tools in the model. Here I'm attaching the jack. This is really well detailed, but has a lot of seam lines that need to be cleaned up. You can see here with the tools on the right fender look really good. Now I'm putting on the front hatches. I'm just going to use a little bit of extra thin just on the connection points. We're going to put this in place. Once this is fit in place, we can put in the upper hatch and also use just a little bit of Tamiya Extra Thin. Now we're going to start putting on the details on the other fender. First, we're going to put on the axe. After the axe is in place, we can then put on the sledgehammer. Now we add the details to the front of the hull. These details are very small, so you have to use just a little bit of Tamiya Extra Thin. If you use too much, you risk flooding the area and ruining the parts. Next, we're going to assemble the crank. Now, I don't know the name of this plate that this crank attaches to, so if anybody knows, just leave a comment in the comment section, because I have no idea what this is, but I'm sure someone out there does. Like I always say, and those who know me, I can build it. Doesn't mean I know what it is. Alright, with this crankshaft contraption made, I'm going to add it to the fender. Next, I'm going to assemble the exhaust. Now, I didn't film myself drilling out and cleaning up the exhaust pipe, but I did drill it out with a 0.2mm drill bit just to clean it up and make it a little more hollow because it is rather thick. I'm also not a big fan of the heat shield that's on the outside of the exhaust. It's way out of scale, and this needs to be replaced if you ever want to update this kit. Now I'm attaching it to the hull and the fender with just a little bit of Tamiya Extra Thin. Once it's in place, you will then need to add the exhaust cover to the hull. Now that the details are pretty much complete on the hull, we can now move to what they call the tail on the back side of the tank. This is probably the most difficult part of the model to build. You really need to follow the directions, and I did put some parts in the wrong place, as you will see, and I didn't realize until I started test fitting some of the parts. The part I'm now putting on is the part that I put on backwards. This is supposed to face the other way, and I actually realize it when I'm putting this part on, as you see right now. So I had to remove the part and also clean up the glue that was left behind, so I was able to reattach the part in the right direction and re-glue it, and I did this off camera. So this is where we are right now. All the parts in the right place and the right direction. Now that I got everything back in order, it was time to put the side parts on. As you can see in the picture, these parts have prominent ejector pin marks, and they were filled in just like we did with the ejector pin marks on the lower hull in part 1, with Tamiya basic putty, thinned down with lacquer thinner. I'm now finishing up the tail assembly by adding just a little more Tamiya extra thin, then adding the slope plate to the back side of the parts. With the slope backside piece glued in place, I add the last few details. The top part of the tail was a little more difficult to attach. Because of this, I made sure to add a little more Tamiya extra thin to the part than I normally would. These are high-res pics of the completed tail. It is nicely detailed, and Tamiya did a great job molding and designing this. Although a little difficult to assemble, it was worth it in the end. Now we move on to attaching the shackles. These are very easy to attach and no glue is needed. Just clean these up while they're on the sprue, as they are very delicate and can be easily damaged. Here I'm attaching the tail to the back side of the hull. I didn't use any glue to attach this for 2 reasons. 1, it has great friction fit, so it didn't need it. And 2, I wanted it to be removable if and when this gets painted. I am now gluing on the brackets that also attach the rear tail to the back side of the hull. I only glue the part of the bracket that is connected to the tail and not to the back side of the hull, again so it can all be removed later. This is the completed tail attached to the back side of the hull, and it really looks great, spare wheel and all. With all the hull details finally done, it was time to assemble the turret. Here I'm assembling the main gun. As with the dry sprockets, Tamiya includes a poly cap to allow the main gun to elevate up and down. Other small details are attached to the main gun now, but will be totally hidden once it's assembled. I am now attaching the main gun to the mantlet. The mantlet was also armored textured using Mr. Surfacer 500. I add just a small amount of Tamiya extra thin and insert the main gun into the mantlet. With the main gun in place, I am now attaching the front parts. I didn't film myself cleaning up the MG that attaches to the front of the mantlet, as it was really small, but it was drilled out and attached at the very end. I now attach the other side of the bracket that will allow the main gun to slightly move left and right. The main gun is put in position from the underside of the turret. There is a small hole in the top of the underside of the turret that the bracket attaches to. Once the gun is in position, the bottom section of the turret ring is then glued in place, ensuring the bottom of the gun fits into the corresponding hole. I'm now attaching the other parts to the mantlet. Just a little extra thin will create a bond into the Mr. Surfacer. Here I'm attaching the 3 lifting hooks on the top of the turret. I made sure that the previously applied Mr. Surfacer was not interfering with the connection points. A little glue and they will fit right in place. The same thing goes for the hooks on the cupola. Unlike the hooks on the turret, these are attached from the inside. Once the hooks are in place, I then attach the small ring to the bottom of the cupola and then put it in place on the turret. I then assemble the rear turret hatch and then glue it in the closed position. This could be attached in the open position, but I decided to keep it closed. The last parts to be put in place are the 3 square ports. Just a small amount of glue and the turret is complete. Here you can see the finished turret with all the armored texture and details. I did forget to put the MG on for these pictures, but it is there on the finished build pics. Now with both the hull and turret complete, we put it all together and we can call this build done. Okay, so to finish up this video, I'm showing some photos of the completed build. This was a fun and enjoyable project, and this kit is definitely up there with some of Tamiya's best in my opinion. This kit will be available worldwide in April 2025. I highly recommend this H39. You will not be disappointed, and I hope my tips and build helps with your enjoyment of the kit. So all the details for this kit and all the products used will be listed in the description below. Also like, share, and subscribe, hit that notification bell so we can get this channel to grow, and we appreciate the support. You can see the full build of this H39 in the May 2025 issue of Military Modelcraft International. Also, you can listen to me as well as my fellow co-hosts on the Modeling Insanity podcast, which you can find on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and other podcast hosting companies. As well as the Quarter Scale Madness podcast, which focuses on everything 1/48 scale and quarter scale models. And a big thank you to Fred Medell from Tamiya America for sending me out the kit to build and review. I appreciate everybody watching, and look out for more build and tutorial videos in the weeks to come.